Welcome to the live stream today, ladies and gents, and you must prepare, apparently. We have had this pretty crazy report that's come out. It says that you should prepare for war on British soil. It's not just for British people, this is for other nations as well. The government's just made this big warning in this new security plan for the UK, and that's just one of the things we're going to talk about today, because this report, I mean, I don't know where they've come from with all of this, but we have got about 20 stories today. I'm going to summarize them quite quickly. I'm going to tell you about, save you a lot of time with the NATO summit as well, let you know what happened there. President Trump's speech, I'll let you know a summary of that. I've just finished watching it real quick. I've got you a summary of that. So there's a lot to go over today, so let's get into it. But we've got to start with the big one, with this new warning on the Security Pact. We've got this new UK-US controversy as well over these nukes that the UK are going to be buying from the US, but they're not allowed to use them unless the US signs off on them, and all sorts of other things. So it's going to be a pretty interesting one today. So what does this new report say then? Well, it's come from the National Security Strategy, and they've warned of increasingly dangerous world, and you, apparently, need to prepare for this. Okay, so let's begin with what it says. So it starts with Russia, it talks about Iran, there's also China, there's North Korea. It's the four within the pact that we've talked about before. So they're saying then that they have concrete evidence, I'll take that very loosely, that there is already a very large amount of cyber attacks and sabotage that are directly threatening the UK. And I'm going to talk about the UK predominantly with a couple of these stories, but we will get into the broader, there's even some Europe and US stuff as well. But it warns that some enemies are laying the foundations for future conflict, and they're putting themselves in a position to cause major disruption to our energy and or supply chains to deter us from standing up to their aggression. Honestly, I think they're reaching a little bit with some of this stuff. I think people are smarter than to read into this or to not read into it. So just because they are disrupting our energy, that would make us roll over. I think they don't really know the British people and the American people and some of the Europeans as well very well if they think that we're that weak and that soft. For the first time in many years, we have to actively prepare for the possibility of the UK homeland coming under direct threat. By the way, this is a government report. This is not some fringe trying to get outlet, trying to get some clicks and views. This is a government report. They say potentially in a wartime scenario. At the same time, the threat to the UK and our allies from nuclear weapons is once again growing. Tackling this challenge is likely to be more complex than it was even in the Cold War, with more states with more nuclear weapons, the further proliferation of nukes and disruptive technology, and the failure of international arms control arrangements to keep pace. So that's how they're leading. They then go on to talk about this increased nuclear threat then. This is one of the main things they've highlighted in the report. They've mentioned the Channel crisis as well. Obviously, what they call the small boats, i.e. the illegal migration. Oops, you're not meant to say that. They call it a small boat crisis. No, it's illegal migration crisis into the country. They also say, very interesting, they say extreme, how can I say this? It's in the reports, I'm just going to say it. Radical Islamist extremism, they say. I haven't seen that in a report for a long, long time. I think they probably finally put that in there because of the grooming gang scandal that they're now finally investigating, doing a U-turn. So they're probably like, okay, that's out there, let's just throw this in as well. But then they go the complete opposite direction. And they say one of the biggest threats is extreme right terror. So in other words, far right terror. It actually says it here, extreme far right terror. It's pretty wild, to economic coercion. By the way, Thank you for your messages about my throat surgery. I'm almost recovered, but it's still a little bit off. So, yeah, just bear with me. But the strategy also warns of novel threats, including, this is a big one, new chemical and biological weapons, hypersonic missiles, like those deployed by Russia, and artificial intelligence-enhanced weapon systems. So there's a lot going on here. And they're saying a lot of these technologies will be available to a wider range of threat actors. So they said there could be all these new challenges. And if you read into it, they don't actually say this, but it's similar to what we talked about with the sort of sleeper cells in the US on Monday. So what they're saying is that, and again, I'm going to speak into it because I'm only reading into what they're saying, because they're linking this to the small boat crisis. I think what they're saying is, so many people have come in that some of the people that were on those boats were obviously sleepers or whatever you want to say, or they came with the intent to do some harm, right? And again, people will start leaving comments, oh, I'm unsubscribing, that's racist, that's this. Listen, listen, if you haven't realized what's going on by now, you're probably never going to realize, right? I'm not saying everyone on these boats. I'm saying that what happens with these crossings is you get a small minority of them that will be these sort of people. Yeah, okay, it might only, let's just say it was only 10 people. It doesn't matter. One person is enough to do a lot of damage. So I think that's what they're saying in this government report, not my report, government report. As part of building resilience to these new threats, the government has announced the creation of a new £1 billion network of national biosecurity centres to sort of stop these. So they wouldn't be spending that money. They wouldn't be allocating all this money now to sort of more investigations and US call it homeland security, right? They wouldn't be doing all of this stuff in the UK if they didn't think people had come in and there was a lot of problems. We've already seen problems even before all of this kicked off. Now, I just wanted to mention real quick before I forget that I'm running a promotion this week on, here it is. This is the Psychology of Wealth program. I know a lot of you have already taken this, but if you haven't, just look below in the description, have a quick look at this. This is an amazing program. I've had people that have watched this 5 or 6 times because it is such an incredible program, and I'm running the same promotion. I try to do a promotion every sort of month on one or 2 courses, so I'm knocking 90% off this. So come and grab this course. It teaches you basically everything about finance and why, for example, some people can never keep money. Why is it doesn't matter how much you earn, you always lose it or you spend it? There's a reason. Just all of these powerful things, teaching you how to amplify your net worth. How do you actually invest it properly? How do you get rid of debt? How do you, if you want to build your own business, how do you pinpoint your passion to do that? All the psychology. I basically worked with some top level psychologists to actually create that. Mine from the finance point of view and the geopolitical as well as entrepreneurship, and the psychologists and some of these other world class experts to help me create the exercises. And I mean, just read the testimonials. People will say like phenomenal things, that they had 0 massive debt and now they're doing really well. So let's carry on then. That was probably the worst segue actually from this topic into that and back. So don't judge me on that one, but let's if you want to grab that, look below in the description. Okay, so what else then? Annual national exercise. They're going to be doing this new exercise every year, they say, and it just reminds me of the whole Event 201. Oops, you're not meant to say that on YouTube. Remember the whole COVID stuff and all the exercises that took place. They're saying that they're going to be doing all of these exercises. It's a national exercise as well, to rebuild resilience to attacks across society. And again, they go into a lot of detail, things that they weren't saying before, they now see as a big risk, especially with different faiths, shall we say, that they believe that Again, you have to read the report for yourself, but it was talking about as certain percentages even, it's linked to another report, of certain faiths start to rise in a country, it causes conflict, and then it causes this and it causes that. This is stuff that you couldn't even talk about before. If you mentioned any of these sort of things, you just get blacklisted. I mean, you've seen how many of my videos have been shadow banned. By the way, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel here. So what are they doing? Well, it's going to be modelled on the Pegasus National Pandemic Exercise this year. It's going to include local resilience forums. This is going to be police, fire, ambulance, councils, the National Health Service, UK Health Security Agency, transport, telecoms, the utility sector, and others. When the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was asked about this, he said the UK is facing daily challenges on the home front that it must guard against. Okay, well, maybe we'll stop with what we just talked about, maybe guard the borders a little bit better, rather than just having it completely open. Asked if there's a threat to the UK of attack, he didn't want to answer the question. He said, well, we're facing challenges on the home front, but whether that's cyber attacks, which are very frequent and serious, or whether it's a focus on energy security. He deliberately avoided the question where we know there's a lot more problems than this. We've seen the Ukraine situation. He said that energy was weaponized in that situation by Russia. That's actually not correct. Okay, let's just get that out there. Love or hate whoever in this situation, that is not correct. Russia didn't weaponize their energy supply against the UK. The UK sanctioned the Russian energy, the oil and gas, and that's why all of our energy exploded up in price, because as a country, we refused to buy it anymore from Russia. I mean, we didn't vote on it. No one had a choice. Same with all the sanctions and everything else. That is what happened. So it annoys me when I keep seeing certain lies going around that Russia weaponized their energy supply against the UK. They didn't, right? Look, I'm not sat here saying I love Russia, I love Putin, all that. I'm not saying any of that, right? I don't like this war that's going on over there. But what I'm saying is they keep making up all of these stories that aren't true. He goes on to say even more about, some of the things Russia did against the UK during that period. Again, none of this is actually accurate. They could, if they wanted to, they could have done some pretty serious things. Of course, the reason they didn't was because it would have pulled in potentially Article 5 or some other. It would have caused even more trouble. So what else? They said they're going to cut more cuts to pay for defence spending. So they're going to be doing a lot more cuts, and they're also looking at more taxation. What a surprise. So alongside these threats, the report draws on work across government, including recent plans to revamp the defence sector and boost the economy by backing growth industries. They want to bolster the security of the UK. So I've got to laugh every time they say that they are bolstering the security of the UK. And I see on my X thread or on my news, how many, little boats, small boats arrived today. It's like, I just laugh. I just can't believe that people say, oh yes, they're sat there clapping, the BBC. Thank you for bolstering the security of the UK. And it is like, can people not see this? Am I the only one? Am I the only one that can see what's, maybe. Drop in the comments if I'm not. We're in the era in which we face confrontations with those who are threatening our security. He talks again about Russia, or the reports talking about Russia here, and that they want to. Again, I don't think that they want to attack the UK. Saying here they want to attack the UK, they've got tactical nuclear weapons. Yes, they do. Do they want to attack the UK? I'm going to say no. I'm going to call BS on this report aspect here. It suggests there may be more cuts to increase defence spending, saying we've already taken a difficult decision to cut spending on overseas development so that we can invest in the armed forces. So there's a lot more tough choices to come, but let's talk about the 5% pledge in a moment then. They say, okay, there's one more threat. They say Israel and Iran, if this keeps going, this will be a big threat to energy prices. I've already talked about that, oil prices and what that could cause. They say significant escalation in any theaters. They also include India and Pakistan, but they don't give details as to how that would have a negative impact on our energy security. So I'll need to read into that. They also say the cost of living and will explode even further, and the ability to grow our economy. So they're basically blaming other people for the fact our economy isn't growing. It's not true. Everything starts at home. It's the government policies, it's the fiscal and monetary policies that cause the low growth era, as well as they did too much currency creation and they increased inflation. If they didn't do that, they could have dropped the interest rates really low by now to boost everything. The Foreign Secretary, this is David Lammy, meanwhile revealed the government's long-awaited... Wait for this one, ready? Long-awaited China audit, they've been working on this forever, has recommended that while Beijing's spying and interference in British democracy and attempts to undermine the UK economy and security have increased, the Asian country is still, David Lammy says, vital for our economic growth. He said that he's not going to be publishing the audit after all this time. He's not going to be publishing it because it contained classified details that would damage the national interest and could offend China. Ooh, gosh, we don't want to do that, do we? We don't want to cause any offence. So British. But summarising his findings, he said that while China's power is an inescapable fact, as the world's second largest economy, it was important that we maintain this relationship. Not engaging with China is no choice at all, he told Parliament. Of course, you can imagine what came back was a brutal response that he basically, well, he isn't the smartest cookie, shall we say. So what should we cover next? Let's talk about... Actually, let's get on. There's so much to go over, honestly. This whole desk is covered. But let's talk about the UK and US. Okay, so this is a big one. So the UK actually needs to ask permission for deploying weapons from the US. The UK needs to ask them. Let's go over that so I can just clearly explain. Britain will need President Trump's permission to use nuclear bombers against Russia. Lord help us. Under NATO's nuclear sharing arrangements, weapons carried by UK's new fighter jets will remain under US custody. Britain will need permission from Donald Trump to deploy any tactical weapons from its new fighter jets. The government has agreed to purchase 12 F-35A fighter jets from the US, meaning British aircraft will carry these nukes for the first time since the Cold War. Why? Because it's in preparation for Russia. It actually says that. It's in preparation for Russia. I just find it absolutely staggering. The Telegraph, however, understands there's no intention for the UK to develop its own sovereign nuclear bomb capabilities, and they will therefore have to purchase the B-61-12 thermo bombs that the planes carry from the US. Under NATO's sharing arrangement, this will remain US custody, and the US will have to sign off. Well, I don't know if they've thought this through. What is let's just say they were foolish enough to use these on Russia. Let's just throw that out there. Would Donald Trump sign off on the US dropping these on Russia? I don't think so. I honestly don't think he would sign off on it. Not unless there was some sort of major scale war going on, like World War III or whatever. Drop in the comments if you think that, or the live chat. I can just about see you over here. Okay, so a Royal Air Force source asked why the UK could not have negotiated a deal which did not leave it so reliant on the US for permission to protect itself. They said, "This is good. Thank you for the question." It's like ChatGPT. You ask it something detailed. Wow, you're thinking great. Thank you for the question. No, I don't want to read that every time. Just tell me the answer. But they're saying, yeah, we're talking to NATO. There's a question over the US. Will it have any sovereign airborne capability? And it's not possible to negotiate a deal because of NATO. And it's not been decided where the B-61 weapons purchase would be based once on British soil. The US is already planning to station nuclear weapons in its US airbase, RAF Lakenheath, according to Pentagon documents. So this would be in the face of needing to use them. So the US can store their nukes on British soil. Interesting. Another possibility would be to house them in the neighbouring British base. I mean, look, they've got a full map here of how they would deploy these. Here's Belarus, here's Moscow, here's all the little... It's mental. It's absolutely crazy. Every time I read these articles, can you imagine this years and years ago? You would have just never seen articles like this. It's only nowadays you're seeing all of these articles non-stop, just about war and what we're going to do. And yeah, well, I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen, but I've given you the main summary from that. You don't need to know any more on that one. But yeah, they always talk about it again here. UK would drop US tactical nukes on Russia. Look at this. Russia using new stealth jets that they are purchasing. And the Prime Minister's, he's even done his press thing. They've gone to have meetings. Here he is with, I guess that's a British general there. Looks like a British brigadier. He's gone to have his meetings to talk about all of this and how they're buying these new planes and the bombs and everything. But we also had the NATO meeting. So that's still ongoing today. So how did that start? Let's begin with how it started. It started with this article. And this was President Trump causing controversy before he even arrived, because he basically said that okay, let me give you what they're saying, because the news will always sway it. That he wanted to cause controversy by casting doubt over US commitment to NATO Mutual Defence Agreement, saying that he wasn't going to honour Article 5. That's not true. The media, they always try and spin this depending on whether they like him or don't like him. What he actually said was, it depends on your definition, when he was asked about Article 5. And he said, there's numerous definitions of Article 5, you know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friend. So he said this beforehand. He said, I'm committed to saving lives. I'm committed to life and safety. So that's basically what he said. Did a big tour. He met the king and who else? In the Netherlands. Who did he meet? I think he met King Alexander of the Netherlands? But anyway, he met him. He met a few other people, and he said, today I'm pleased to announce that NATO, this was from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he said, I'm pleased to announce that NATO has already added an additional $1 trillion in defence spending over the past decade. And he said, my dear President, my dear Donald, thank you so much for pushing us. And then he goes on with all this other stuff. I don't want to make you sick. But he went on and do you remember? This is the same man that absolutely blasted President Trump, couldn't stand President Trump. And now all of a sudden, oh, my dear Donald, Germany is also backing major NATO defence spending boost as well. So the Chancellor is boosting the spending to 153 billion. By the way, I wouldn't exactly say this is all positive news. We'll come to that shortly. Why? So 153 billion from the 86 billion euros this year. So that is a massive jump. It's almost doubling the budget. He says it's to counter the threat from Moscow. We will decide to invest significantly more in our security, says the German Chancellor, not to do the United States a favour, but because Russia actively threatens the freedom of the entire Euro-Atlantic area. Maybe. It's like the chicken and the egg. I always look at it in this way. It's a chicken and an egg. Is it that Russia threatens the whole of Europe. Obviously, it threatens Ukraine. It's not debatable, right? But is it that it threatens the whole of Europe and it wants to, as that other article said, bomb the UK and take over the UK? What would Russia want with the UK? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Or is it that as NATO pushes closer to Russia, you have... It's like the chicken and the egg, isn't it? Who is at fault? I think it's just a complex situation. As NATO pushes closer, Russia builds up their defences. And as Russia builds up their defences, NATO builds up their defences. And what you eventually have is this massive, like the Cold War or some of the other conflicts, just have massive, massive stockpiles of weapons. And eventually, they decide to use them. How are they going to finance the increase then? Germany. The government said it's going to suspend a constitutional debt break. What a surprise. Is anyone surprised by this? They need to seek EU approval, though, to actually do this because they need to classify defence spending as an exceptional measure, allowing it to skirt the bloc's deficit limits. Yeah, because Germany is broke. In fact, they're worse than broke. They're in massive, massive debt. And let me give you a tip or an example here. If your household budget is in massive debt and you're getting more and more in debt, maybe, I don't know, but maybe you should stop spending. Is that perhaps a good idea? Stop spending and address the debt. Maybe take a debt program or something similar. I will never make another debt program, by the way. I made a debt program for everyone. I thought it would be a great thing because people are always complaining they've got loads of debt. And it was one of the least popular programs I've ever made. So it just shows you that no one wants to clear their debt from the looks of things. It doesn't matter where you look at it, whether it's Germany, it's the US, it's the UK. No one wants to clear their debt. So what are they going to do then? They're going to increase the spending. They're going to double it. And they said this is off the back of pledging 8.3 billion euros in aid to Ukraine next year. Actually, let's be more specific. It's 8.3 billion in military aid. So this is a correction to add into their article here. It's I checked this beforehand. It's not aid, right? It's not like they're sending food parcels or something like that. They're sending it's weapons. It's military aid. So it's weapons. It's weapon-based support. Okay. The Hague Summit is centering on boosting the alliance's defence spending target from 2% up to 5%. And that has now been achieved. Pretty much everyone has now signed up to that. The UK definitely has. We have the article here. The UK has agreed to this. Keir Starmer has signed up to boost UK defence spending to 5%. Doesn't say how he's going to pay for it, but they're going to do it. And they're going to do it by 2035. He's hailed the move as an opportunity to deepen our commitment to NATO and drive greater investment in the nation's wider security. Interesting. What do you think he means by that? Drop it in the comments. Drive greater investment. Okay, so we've got a keyword here, investment, into the nation's wider security. So it's obvious. I think it's, again, touching upon perhaps Russia. It's the eastern flank. It's definitely not internal security, is it? So they're looking to put that investment in as a protection measure. Is it a attack measure? I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of both. Making the pledge alongside the publication of the new national security strategy, they are on course to reach 4.1% of GDP by 2027. So even though it'll be 5% by 2035, in just 2 years' time, even less than that, a year and a half, they'll be up to 4.1%. He said this is in the national interest. It brings together the work commissioned by him when he entered government, including the Strategic Defence Review and the China audit. Again, he's taking credit for a lot here. The China audit wasn't even released. After doing the whole audit, they found that obviously it was very negative, and they didn't even release it anyway. What's the point? what is the point in going to all of that effort and cost to do this massive audit on China to only find that there's all the stuff we just talked about, spying and espionage and all the other stuff, to say, actually, we're not even going to release the report because we don't want to upset the relationship. It is just crazy. Oh, one final thing on the German aspect, though. He reaffirmed support for the EU sanctions for the shadow fleet. They want more sanctions on Russia this year. They want the US to put more sanctions on Russia this year. And he said that they're now deploying German forces to Lithuania. So there's another big one for you. Now, let's just summarize what happened at NATO then. I know this is going to be a long stream, ladies and gents. This is going to be a long one. So let's just summarize what actually happened at NATO. And it's still ongoing, but they're just about done. The 2% target has been raised to 5%, and everybody kissed President Trump's butt on that one. I think is the best way to say it. Oh, Mr. Donald, thank you so much. When actually they were complaining like crazy that he was trying to force them up to 3.5%. And he did say 5%. He wanted 5%, but he was trying to get them up to 3.5%. And I even said at the time, I think he's saying 5% because he knows that they'll negotiate and try and do 3.5%. Well, they've actually gone all the way to 5%. And I think it's because of those statements as well that were made before he left, saying, oh, well, I think it was more of a bluff, right? He's very good at that, at making these sort of comments. So I think they all found out about that comment and said, right, we can't risk losing the US because the US is about $1 trillion worth of defense in that region. It would take too long to make that up. It would be too difficult. So I think that's probably why they signed off on it. The formal declaration is to 2029. Spain was the only country that got an exemption because, well, it doesn't even say why, it just says they got an exemption. Good for you, Spain. Okay, well, you managed to swerve that one. Number 2, Article 5 was reaffirmed. They wanted President Trump to reaffirm his commitment to Article 5. So they point blank asked him to reaffirm it, and he said, yes, he committed to that. And I'll tell you about his speech as well. I've got it all summarized for you. Number 3, they wanted to put more focus on Ukraine and the Middle East. President Trump wasn't convinced about that, so he had a private meeting with Zelensky. And it was private. There was no new commitments made, even though Zelensky wanted new commitments. President Trump refused to give any new commitments. The US reaffirmed support for the Patriot missile systems for Ukraine. So that was one thing. He reaffirmed but didn't give new support. And he also talked about, over and over again, these big, beautiful B-2 bombers. He must have said it 5 times. I mean, I probably heard him say it 5 times. Big, beautiful operation. This big, beautiful. Everything was big and beautiful on his everything he said, from his speech to talking to people. You just keep seeing the hands coming out. Big, beautiful. Broader alliance dynamics. Secretary General Mark Rutte credited Trump for the push on defense spending. We know about that. European leaders, including Canada's Mark Carney, he was not impressed with President Trump. Doesn't say why. He just said he wasn't impressed with him. Okay, fine. Drama, gossip. However, debates around trade with Russia and EU-US economic frictions did continue. France's Macron also had lots of digs at Trump, and he even mentioned possible US tariffs at the summit. Okay, good luck with that one, Macron. But overall, it's a pretty positive, depending on how you look at it. If you, it depends how you look at it in terms of the outcome here. But the main thing was this 5% commitment. So this marked a historic shift in NATO's funding framework up to 2035. And they didn't lose the core support for Ukraine, which they were worried about. And then Article 5 was reaffirmed. And then they talked about the 3 biggest threats that they see they need to counter: Russia, Iran, China, And then the fourth really is global terrorism. They think is going to be on the increase. So Trump's speech then, what did he have to say? Here's your highlights. He talked about Iran's nuclear facilities, big, beautiful B-2 bombers, obliteration, and set them back for years. He then criticized, I think it was CNN, and said, "Oh, fake news. They said that I didn't hit the bomb, I didn't hit them, but I did." And NATO allies agreed to defense spending. He talked about that. He said they needed to because the US is $1 trillion, and it accounts for 2/3 of NATO spending. He talked then about the US pilots and explained this, the 36-hour round trip. He talked about global conflicts, including India and Pakistan. Said there was all sorts of stuff about him brokering the deal, and then he didn't get the credit for brokering the deal. Talked about Rwanda, the Congo, and Russia, Ukraine. It's interesting. You don't ever see people flying the Rwanda flag on their profile or the Congo, do you? These things don't really get talked about. He said America's military technology is unmatched anywhere in the world. No one can touch it. Big, beautiful military. Press criticizes media outlets again. And what then? Let's see, what else? More criticism of the media. CNN, New York Times, MSNBC. And he just talked a little bit about NATO then. All right, we're almost done. I told you this is a long one. They then focused a lot. There was a big article about Trump pulling US troops out of Europe. This was a big one today. I saw a lot of people talking about. Let me just tell you this, because they said this America First policy, Trump's going to pull the troops out of Europe and everything else. I don't see this at all. And I'll tell you why from a boots on the ground perspective from when I was in the military. Number one, I think I've got it here, 84,000 active service members in Europe. Now, you think a lot of them will have families as well, so you can probably, call it 200,000, maybe somewhere around that region. It could even be more, but let's just say it's 200,000 people in terms of you'll have your married quarters or whatever you call that in the US and other countries. You'll have the troops and the support and everything else. Are you really going to, where are they going to go? Are you just going to move them back? And where exactly are they going to go? US military bases are pretty much at capacity anyway. They'd have to build loads of new bases to house all of these people. And it would just take months. It would be a huge operation. And again, why would they do it? Everyone thinks that he's going to do it, or the threat of if they didn't do the 5%, he would do it. I just don't think it would have happened. Why would they weaken their position? Why would the US weaken their position? They've got all these bases there on long-term leases, etc. Why would they just walk away from them and weaken their position? I don't get it. I don't know why everyone's talking about this. I think the odds of that are 0%. Now, this was a really interesting one. This is Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada. Canada has just signed a new defence pact with the European Union. So this is very interesting indeed. And this happened. I'm surprised they didn't wait until they actually heard what President Trump had to say. But you remember we talked about this before. Mark Carney said that he doesn't trust Donald Trump, he doesn't like Donald Trump, and he doesn't want to be reliant on the US to kind of support Canada if they need any assistance. So what they've done now, and Europe was the same, they wanted to do this defense pact with Canada. So that's basically what they've done. They've done this new defense pact. This is a military pact. So I'm assuming, it doesn't go into details, but I'm assuming, and now once the report comes out properly, I'll go through it all, but I'm assuming this means it's similar to your Article 5 with NATO. If the European Union needs assistance, Canada will support. If Canada needs assistance, the European Union will support. So, but it says, according to the Security and Defence Partnership, the EU and Canada will explore ways to cooperate on military assistance as well for Ukraine. So they talk as well about how this will benefit Canada. They don't talk about the benefit to Ukraine, funny enough. And this is where you know where it's going. They talk about the benefits to Canada monetarily. Oh, this will help you with your defense and, you know, your industry and weapons and supplies and personnel. They even talk about, it's always the same thing. Military equipment, it's always the same thing. It's all about money. That's all this, the whole thing, that's all they're talking about is money. They're not talking about, you know, Ukraine or the poor citizens, you know, the everyday people in Ukraine that are still dying on a day-to-day basis. None of that sort of talk. And they're just talking about how this will benefit Canada from a monetary point of view. And of course, the European Union probably pitched their big 800 billion or whatever it is package that they're doing. Which, another interesting thing, by the way, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. If you've been watching this long, make sure you're a subscriber. Definitely get subscribed. They said it's time to get serious on defence. A moment of truth for NATO as leaders seek unity on a spending hike. Now, what's interesting about this is the Parliament. Yeah, it is the European Parliament. Again, there's no real details on this yet because it's only just come out. The European Parliament is about to sue the European Commission. Huh? This is over 150 billion euro defense loan program. And I've really got to go, I'm probably going to make a video on this to go into this in detail because this is a rabbit hole. It's like money here, money there, moving. It's so crazy. I don't even know where to go with this. Maybe I'll just save this for another day. Look into this if you want, by the way, what they're doing. It's absolutely crazy what they're doing. So they're going to be suing one another now over what they're doing here. It's just wild. Ladies and gents, thank you for being online here. Really appreciate you. And yeah, make sure to check out the courses and the programs below. Thanks for all the comments. I can see them all here. Yeah, check out those links below. Grab yourself a program. You can still get the gold and silver courses as well. These are, you know, sort of things that protect you in this environment. Gold especially. And here's a little challenge for you, by the way. Why is it that gold is up 42% in US dollars, actually 43.5% in US dollars for the year, but it's only up 33% in euros and British pounds? Isn't that interesting? Why could that be? And that's exactly why you should be holding some of this stuff, by the way. All right. Thank you so much for being a subscriber here. Take care. God bless you. God bless your family. And I'll see you on the next one.